Hello, I'm Judith Oden Choi, and this is Moving for the Movement, applying viewpoints and composition techniques to the design of online social justice campaigns. My collaborators at Carnegie Mellon are Jessica Hammer and Jodi Forlizzi, and John Royal is a theater director and facilitator who consulted on this project. At the heart of the Moving for the Movement workshop is this attempt to embody the virtual. Using movement, and by movement, what I mean here is something akin to dance, but in this case, we're talking about simple physical movements like walking through a space, gesturing with your arms, right? Nothing too intimidating. So we're using movement to help us embody and breathe life into these two-dimensional and flat interactions, which we're so accustomed to dealing with in social media platforms. Right, so on something like Twitter, we have to flatten our identity. Our relationships are defined through very few features, and our communities all become sort of obscured behind the interface itself and the algorithms that are running it. But what that interface represents is actually a very dynamic and complex social spatial relationships between myself and others who are in my network. So we're trying to embody that network, bring it to life, help make it more visible, help make the interactions within it more felt, and use that knowledge to help us design network campaigns that build the type of relationships and networks that are reflective of social justice values and will be useful in executing actions and protests and sustaining movements. What you'll find in the paper is you'll find details about the movement workshop, all of the themes that we explored, where those came from. I tried to include facilitation techniques as much as I could, the insights that we can draw from the movement exercises, both from the participants within the exercise and from the perspective of the design researchers who are viewing it and analyzing the workshop itself as an artifact. And some insight into the sort of technology needs and tools that we might be able to extrapolate from the participant designs themselves. I'm not going to talk too much about the specifics of what happened in the workshop in this video. And instead, I'm going to use this opportunity to help flesh out what's really hard to understand on the paper page itself. What really is viewpoints and compositions, why are we using them, and what's sort of the potential of this kind of technique moving forward. So first, a little bit about network activism or network movements, right? They are decentralized, they are horizontal. Often the different issues, the different movements, the different actors are interconnected, overlapping. Issues themselves might be intersectional. And we use this metaphor from Deleuze and Guattari that Funk brings to light here of this rhizomatic era of contention. And in this diagram of imagining that this is a movement, right? The mushrooms themselves are the people, and the roots are the relationships between the peoples. And this relationship is shaped largely by the affordances, the algorithms, the features of the platforms that the movement is using to connect. And those values of the platforms don't always match up with the values of the activists. So the technique itself, we're drawing from Viewpoints. Viewpoints is both a set of techniques, exercises for actors, and a framework for the theater. It is by Bogart and Tina Landau, both directors. It's based off of a framework from dance by Mary Overly. So the viewpoints, physical viewpoints, basically break down into how we understand space and the spatial relationships between people, between objects, and with the environment. How we understand our body in space and the different kind of shape and gestures we can make with our body, and how we understand our body in space over time, right? Use of things like tempo and duration. So you use these basic ingredients in order to compose images for the stage. This is a very quick, cute video that gives you some, from Auburn University, that gives you some idea of how straightforward this can actually be.
Topography, architecture, and spatial relationship. Spatial relationship can be used to define a relationship between two characters. So, for example, if I'm over here and Kishara is over there, we don't have a very close relationship in a story. But if I'm here with my arm around Tony, you can see that we're friends, and that would give you a relationship. Topography is used.
So that gives you a quick and basic understanding of how it might manifest in theater, right? So you can see in this image from a production from Anne Bogart how they're creating a certain relationship. This woman has the focus. So besides spatial relationships, the other important part of this in this workshops is how to direct attention, where the audience's attention goes and where the participants' attention goes. Here you can see again that attention to the composition and to what the story is in the image itself. And remember I said that Viewpoints is both this exercises for the actor and for the director. So this video just gives you a little bit of an idea of what Viewpoints looks like in practice, what the exercises look like for actors. What's going on here is that the first stage of this process is helping actors connect inward, to focus inward, to be attuned to their own experience and to their own breath. Next, to become more aware of their surroundings, to be more aware of the people around them and the space around them. And then to develop ways to respond in coordination with the people around you. And to respond authentically or automatically or through a process that's called here kinesthetic response. So these are the sorts of, that's the principles behind it that lets us move from, let me start first with what the user feels when they're the one participating in this network. Let me then move to what they're able to take in and be aware of. And now let's move through what does it mean to interact with each other and what is the result of those interactions. And so we think about the director and the actors together as co-creators of the theatrical experience, whether they're starting and creating a script from scratch, which is very often the case of using this. People use this technique very often in theater that is devised and that is built around a issue or social justice action. And this process of composing, making compositions, which is the short improvisations that explore a theme or a character, and in this case, dynamics of a social network, in the case of our workshop. So in addition to embodying the interaction between two people who might be interacting on a social network or in a social media campaign, we also look at what happens when those interactions repeat and multiply. And that's what we experienced as this idea of like choreographing the network. What do the participants want the network to look like? What kind of shape should it be? What is the relationship between the different components within it? And this idea of choreographing the interactions and how the interactions might move was something that participants in the workshop did physically in the space and also on a page, as you can see in these simple storyboards here. So I think that there's really potential for this technique, both in use for the design of networked activist campaigns, which to be clear, we did not quite accomplish in this workshop. This was one workshop, and to really design an activist campaign would take a sustained relationship with an issue-oriented group and to actually execute the campaign out in the world. In addition to that, I think there's possibilities here for designing processes that, for the process, for creating design processes that are really based in that felt experience of the user, that embodied experience of the user, and reflect social justice values. And I think that there's the possibility of using what we learn in this process of designing from a social justice point of view to the design of social technology that embodies these values and that really honors that felt experience. And so I thank everybody who has supported this work. I want to recognize the current movement for Black Lives, and I wanted to invite you to continue the conversation with me if you like. Thank you.